Jacob hurried on, finally arriving in the land of the east. He saw a well in the distance. 3 flocks of sheep and goats lay in an open field beside it, waiting to be watered, but a heavy stone covered the mouth of the well. Jacob went over to the shepherds and asked, "Where are you from, my friends?" "We are from Haran," they answered. "Do you know a man there named Laban, the grandson of Nahor?" he asked. "Yes, we do," they replied. Jacob was still talking with them when Rachel arrived with her father's flock, for she was a shepherd. And because Rachel was his cousin, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and because the sheep and goats belonged to his uncle Laban, Jacob went over to the well and moved the stone from its mouth and watered his uncle's flock. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, and he wept aloud. He explained to Rachel that he was her cousin on her father's side, the son of her aunt Rebekah. So Rachel quickly ran and told her father, Laban. As soon as Laban heard that his nephew Jacob had arrived, he ran out to meet him. He embraced and kissed him and brought him home. After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me without pay just because we are relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older daughter was named Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, "I'll work for you for 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. "I'd rather give her to you than to anyone else. Stay and work with me." So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. Finally, the time came for him to marry her. "I have fulfilled my agreement," Jacob said to Laban. "Now give me my wife so I can sleep with her." So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night, when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob and he slept with her. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. "What have you done to me?" Jacob raged at Laban. "I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me?" "It's not our custom here to marry off a younger daughter ahead of the firstborn," Laban replied. "But wait until the bridal week is over. Then we'll give you Rachel too, provided you promise to work another 7 years for me." So Jacob agreed to work 7 more years. A week after Jacob had married Leah, Laban gave him Rachel too. So Jacob slept with Rachel too, and he loved her much more than Leah. He then stayed and worked for Laban the additional 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. So Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, "The Lord has noticed my misery, and now my husband will love me." She soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Simeon, for she said, "The Lord heard that I was unloved and has given me another son." Then she became pregnant a 3rd time and gave birth to another son. He was named Levi, for she said, "Surely this time my husband will feel affection for me, since I have given him 3 sons." Once again Leah became pregnant and gave birth to another son. She named him Judah, for she said, "Now I will praise the Lord." And then she stopped having children.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving headfirst into, well, let's just say some serious family drama. Risky bargains, a little divine intervention. Get ready to unpack it all as we dig into the book of Genesis.
Always a good time with Genesis. And you're right, this chapter's a wild ride, really makes you think about family ties, right?
Yeah.
How messy they can get, even when you've got, supposedly, a divine plan going on.
Right. We're in Genesis 29, picking up with Jacob. Now, he's shown up in Haran, fresh off some intense family drama back home.
That's an understatement.
Right. Think like the ultimate sibling rivalry. He and his twin brother, Esau, not exactly best buds anymore.
To put it mildly. So Jacob's on the run, ends up at a well. But this isn't just any water break.
Oh, this well is important. It's got this massive stone covering it, so heavy that it takes a whole team of shepherds to move it. Why even have that? What's the deal with this well?
It's all about control, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Water back then, especially in that region, wasn't just for drinking. It was precious, a valuable, guarded resource.
Ah, so Laban, Rachel's father, keeping a tight leash on the most valuable thing around. Makes sense. I'm sensing a theme here. This Laban character controlling.
Definitely. He's calling the shots. Everyone knows it. Patriarchal society.
Yeah.
Very much in charge.
Gotcha. So back to Jacob. He's at this well, and he sees Rachel, Laban's daughter, tending sheep. And, I mean, the text is not subtle. Jacob is completely smitten, love at first sight, tears, the whole 9 yards. Was it really just, like, her amazing beauty, or was there something else going on here, do you think?
Well, don't forget, wells had a lot of symbolism back then. Meeting places, obviously, sources of life, but also, sometimes, sources of conflict. This chance encounter at the well, maybe not so coincidental.
Ooh, I like that. So the well itself is a character in this story, foreshadowing all the drama about to go down. But okay, back to Jacob and this instant infatuation. He agrees to work for Laban for 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. 7 years. Was that normal back then? Or was Laban taking advantage of lovesick Jacob?
Well, let's put it this way. 7 years was a long time back then. Marriage was a different game. Alliances, economic security. Love wasn't always the main driver. Laban was playing the long game here.
Okay, so what? Like a power move and a business deal? This Laban is a piece of work. But wait, there's a twist. Enter Leah, Rachel's older sister. And, well, the text doesn't hold back. She's described as lackluster compared to Rachel. Ouch.
Yeah, that comparison is definitely significant. It's not just a love story, right? It's about societal expectations,
Yeah.
what was considered desirable, and the consequences of not fitting that mold.
I'm already feeling for Leah, and we're
Yeah.
just getting started. Okay, so to be clear, Jacob agrees to this whole 7 years of labor deal, no questions asked. Even for love at first sight, that's a long time. What's going through his head?
It makes you wonder, right? Was he truly madly, deeply in love? Or was there something else motivating him? It's like he's got his own game going on here. Whatever it was, he was willing to risk it all for Rachel.
All right, I'm hooked. We've got a controlling father, a love-struck shepherd, and 2 sisters caught in the middle of it all. This is about to get good. So Jacob, he's put in the work, right? 7 years, all for Rachel, talk about commitment. And the day arrives, the wedding day, the culmination of all this waiting. But this is Genesis, so you know something crazy is about to happen.
It really is quite the twist.
The wedding feast is over, everyone's partied out, and Jacob thinks he's finally going to be reunited with Rachel. But yeah, no.
Laban, Laban, pulls a total bait and switch, sends Leah into Jacob's tent instead of Rachel.
Wait, what? Nobody notices. Someone had to have realized it was the wrong person.
Think about it, though. Days of celebrating, music, probably a little too much wine.
Right.
It's not hard to imagine how a switch, especially if it's planned out like this, could be pulled off.
Okay, fair enough. But still, Laban is playing a dangerous game here. But I don't get it. Even if no one else noticed, how does Jacob not realize it?
Remember, no electricity back then. We're talking oil lamps, shadows. It's easy to miss things. Plus, I'm sure there was, a certain level of expectation, maybe some nerves.
Yeah, I get it. So he wakes up the next morning, sees Leah. I can't imagine that went over well.
Understatement. He's furious. The text says he cries out, "What have you done to me?" Talk about a justified reaction. He's been totally played.
Yeah, 7 years of his life gone.
Yeah.
And for what? But, I mean, even though it was a trick, the marriage it's still valid, right?
Exactly. That's what's so fascinating here. Despite the deception, it's a legally and religiously binding marriage. Really shows you the power dynamics at play, the importance of a father's word in that society.
So he's stuck. But what about Rachel? And poor Leah caught in the middle of all this. This is heartbreaking.
But absolutely. It's more than just a broken contract, right? You've got real people, real feelings tangled up in this whole mess. Leah's in a marriage where she's clearly not the first choice, a constant reminder of her sister, and Rachel's future is totally up in the air.
The tension is unreal. So what happens next? Jacob just accepts this.
Well, Laban, always the businessman, offers Jacob another deal. Work another 7 years, he says, and you can marry Rachel too.
He's kidding, right? Another 7 years? This guy, I swear. It's almost like he planned this whole thing from the beginning.
It does make you wonder, but again, it highlights those power dynamics we were talking about. Laban's in control. He's using his daughters as bargaining chips. And Jacob, blinded by, whatever it is he feels for Rachel, he goes along with it.
And what about Leah? She's stuck. She wasn't his first choice, and now she's in this marriage where she's constantly reminded of that.
It's a really difficult situation. It's interesting, though, because Leah, she finds a kind of strength, a source of power, through motherhood. She gives birth to 4 sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi.
I've heard those names. They're important, right?
Huge. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. The point is, Leah's story is just as important here as Jacob and Rachel's. She's often overlooked, but her experiences, her struggles, they're incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. This whole story is intense. We've got love, betrayal, family drama, and it's not over yet. We'll be back in a moment to delve even deeper into the world of Genesis. So last we left off, Jacob's juggling 2 wives, a bunch of kids, and enough family drama to fuel a whole saga. It's a lot, even for Genesis. But where's Rachel in all this? She's been waiting in the wings this whole time. I can't even imagine the emotional roller coaster she's on.
It really makes you think about the position of women back then, doesn't it? Leah's finding her place through motherhood, while Rachel, well, she's still childless. Her desires are kind of overshadowed by this whole complicated marriage arrangement.
Yeah, the pressure on women to have children back then, it was intense. It wasn't just about family. It was tied to their status, their worth. But Rachel's story, it doesn't end there, does it?
Definitely not. Things take another turn, because of course they do. Rachel, she eventually becomes a mother, gives birth to Joseph and then later Benjamin. But these births, they aren't easy. It really highlights the risks women faced in those times.
It's like the story's telling us, hey, don't get too comfy. Life's full of surprises. Even when it seems like things are straightforward, there's always more going on. We tend to think of these biblical figures as like larger than life, but their stories are full of these relatable human experiences.
Right. That's why we're still talking about them thousands of years later.
Yeah.
Love, betrayal, complicated families, it's all timeless.
Totally. Okay, so to wrap up, we've got Jacob, 2 wives, a whole bunch of kids, and years of hard labor under his belt. What does it all mean? What's the lasting impact of this whole saga for him and for us today?
That's what's so cool about these stories. They're old, but they still speak to us. This one, it reminds us that even when you have it all, love, family, wealth, you can still experience loss, longing, the consequences of your actions. It makes you think about love, choices, how powerful family can be, good and bad.
Yeah, it's like a warning, but also like a story of resilience, forgiveness, the messiness of relationships. We've just scratched the surface of this story. There's so much more to unpack. But before we go, any final thoughts? Some wisdom to leave our listeners with?
One thing I always come back to with this story is empathy. Jacob, Rachel, Leah, even Laban, they're all acting on their desires, their fears. When we try to see things from their point of view, it adds so much depth. Maybe we even understand ourselves a little better.
I love that. Even in these epic ancient stories, it's the human stuff that stays with you. This has been quite the deep dive, that's for sure. But like you said, there's always more to explore. So until next time, keep asking questions, keep digging deeper into the stories that shape our world.